cursed Emma. This is the story of a girl living in Shimane Prefecture, Japan, in the summer of 1993. In a small country town, there was an old shrine. At that shrine, many people used to write their wishes on Emma, votive picture tablet, and visit the shrine, but now there were almost no visitors. The only sound in the empty shrine was the sound of countless Emma fluttering in the wind. There is an old rumor that there is a special Emma at this shrine. During the record-breaking heat of August, Minako, a young woman living in town, hears this rumor from a friend, and out of curiosity, she and her friend decide to visit the shrine. Upon arriving at the shrine, Minako found an Emma Hape, votive tablet, lined with countless old Emma, votive picture tablet. There were Emma with various wishes written on them, but there was one Emma that stood out among them, drawn in black ink. Minako was intrigued by the Emma and picked it up to look at it, whereupon she saw that it said, instead of the wish being granted, the cursed person's life will be taken away. Minako felt eerie, but out of curiosity decided to write her wish on the Emma. She wrote on the Emma, wishing that her family would be happy. That night, while Minako was having dinner with her family at home, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her head and collapsed. She did not know what had happened and called her family for help, but they showed no reaction to her. On the contrary, the family acted as if she did not exist. Help! Minako's desperate cries did not seem to reach her family. The next morning, Minako felt she had to go somewhere far away as she watched the entire family ignore her and talk happily. She left the house and headed back to the shrine where the Emma was hanging. There she realized that she was cursed, just as the Emma had said. Minako regretted wishing for her family's happiness in exchange for her life on the Emma, and attempted to break the Emma to break the curse. However, no matter how hard she tried, the Emma would not break. In despair, Minako broke down in tears in the precincts of the shrine. At that moment, Minako felt an eerie laughter coming from far away. She looked around in horror, but there was no one there. The laughter did not leave her ears as she left the shrine. Soon, Minako became aware of the sensation that her life was slowly being drained away, and she was tormented by sadness and despair, unable to accept the reality of the situation. Minako began to notice a strange phenomenon: her body was gradually disappearing. Then, around her, the spirits of people who had been sacrificed by the Emma curse in the past began to appear. They kept laughing as they whispered to Minako. Minako's despair grew as she realized that their souls had been bound forever by the wishes she had written on the Emma. Fear sets in as she realizes that she, like them, will be doomed to be bound to this world after death. Gradually, Minako's vision darkens and she does not know where she is. As she lost sight of her surroundings, she could hear the screams and cries of those who had been sacrificed by Emma's curse. She felt she could not bear it any longer and called for help, but no one recognized her voice. Minako felt her life coming to an end as she was tormented by fear and despair. As she was engulfed by the darkness around her, she used the last of her strength to cry out to Emma for help, but nothing changed. She attempted to resist to the last, but gradually ran out of strength. Her body gradually became transparent, and finally she disappeared completely. At that moment, the spirits around her also disappeared and the area was once again enveloped in silence. After Minako disappeared, no one knew of her fate. The shrine would be visited by yet another victim, and the curse of the Emma would take the lives of people one after another. This terrible legend would continue to be whispered in the darkness of the town. As time passed, Minako's family forgot all about her. New Emma, votive picture tablet, was hung at the shrine, and people came to write their wishes incessantly. However, they were unaware of Minako's fate and unaware of the possibility of being caught in the curse of the Emma. One night, a young woman visits the shrine. She, too, wrote her wish on an Emma, hoping for the happiness of her family. However, as she goes to hang the Emma, she suddenly notices something strange. Behind the Emma, there was an old Emma secretly hidden, with the same circumstances as Minako's. The woman looked at the Emma, and then at the old Emma, and realized that it was a wish for her family. As the woman stares at the Emma, she is driven by a terrible premonition. She then realizes that she is caught up in the curse of the Emma and is driven to the brink of despair. The sight of her suffering the same fate as Minako's sparks further horror in the darkness of the town. The curse of the Emma, which has claimed one victim after another, will forever be talked about as a terrifying entity that creeps into people's hearts and minds.
The time when red spider lilies wilt. A house at dusk, the sound of the still new curtains swaying in the wind. This is the house in the countryside where 27-year-old Yoichi has newly moved to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. It is late September in 1997, when the summer heat still lingers a little, and the country road is covered with bright red spider lilies. Yoichi had moved to Tokyo after graduating from college, but he was tired of city life and decided to make a fresh start and start a new life in the countryside. The house he moves into is an old wooden structure on the outskirts of town. He was introduced to the house by a real estate agent he stopped by. The house looked to be 50 years old, but there was something quaint about it, and Yoichi immediately fell in love with it. For some reason, however, there were many mirrors in every room of the house. At first, this did not bother him, but then strange phenomena began to occur. Entering the house, Yoichi looks around the living room. The air is a bit humid, and Yohiki holds his nose as he opens the window to ventilate. As Yohiki explores the house, he notices that there are mirrors in the dimly lit hallways and on the walls of the stairs. All the mirrors are surrounded by old picture frames and have a somehow dark atmosphere. In the bedroom, there was a large mirror that reflected the whole body. The frame was red and creepy. As Yoichi stares at his reflection in the mirror, he realizes that the fatigue from the move is showing on his face. Every time he looked in the mirror, he felt his expression change to one of anxiety and fear. Tired from the actual moving process, Yoichi decided to finish the move early before the sun set. In the evening, as the sun was setting, Yohiki fell asleep in his bedroom, exhausted. In the middle of the night, Yohiki wakes up to feel something in front of him. In the darkness, he stares at his reflection in his bedroom mirror. Then, he sees himself in the mirror smiling slowly. Yoichi stiffens with fear. He rubs his eyes and looks in the mirror again, but there is nothing strange. Except that there is a woman right behind Yohiki. Startled, Yohiki covered the mirror with a cloth to hide it, covered his head with a blanket, and closed his eyes tightly. The next morning, with the cloth-covered mirror at his side, he recalled last night. He did not dare to remove the cloth. Having just moved in, Yohiki leaves his house to greet his neighbors. The neighbors greet Yoichi warmly, but look uneasy about his house. They are told that there is a rumor that the house has been haunted by bad luck for a long time. However, no one knows the specific reason. Yoichi was curious about the identity of the female spirit that appeared in the mirror. He likes the house itself, although he thinks it would be better if he moved out immediately. I thought I would find out the identity and history if possible, and then decide whether or not to move. I started researching about the history of the house and the rumors in the area. As he gathered information from the library and the internet, he learned that a certain mirror maker used to live in Yohiki's house. One evening, Yohiki gathered up his courage and stood in front of the mirror again, hoping to ask her directly. Behind him stood the same woman. Yohiki's body stiffens again in fear. Her expression is hidden by her hair. Her skin is pale and bloodless, and she is standing right behind Yohiki, motionless. He tries to speak to her in the mirror, but there is no response. Around that time, a series of strange events begin to occur around him. The door to his room opens by itself in the middle of the night, and noises echo through the house. Mysterious footsteps are sometimes heard in the house, and Yoichi is terrified. Even through the cracks in the curtains at night, Yoichi feels as if someone is watching him. He spends sleepless days and grows tired. These days, he feels as if his feet are not planted on the ground. Scared, Yohiki tries to uncover the truth about the mirror. He works with a local antique dealer to discover the skills and secrets of the mirror craftsman who made the mirror in his home. But as he gets closer to the truth, danger looms over Yohiki. One night, when Yohiki removes the cloth from the mirror, the spirit of a woman is still there. However, she suddenly disappears. Soon after, more powerful and evil spirits begin to appear in Yohiki's house. The door opens by itself, dishes fall from the cupboard and make a loud noise. Yohiki's fear becomes more and more unbearable, and he attempts to break the mirror. However, the mirror shows no sign of breaking. He tried to call his family and friends for help, but his phone did not work and the front door would not open. Yoichi has become isolated. He stayed in his room and pounded the mirror with his fist. He kept pounding on the mirror every day, hoping that by breaking it, he could break the curse. How much time had passed? A week? A month? Yohiki's hand no longer felt pain. The mirror had turned red. He could not break the mirror until the end, and he had used up all his strength. Yoichi was found in front of the mirror, his face violently distorted by fear. After that, the house became infamous and no one would go near it. The mirror maker's curse has yet to be lifted, and it is said that every time a red spider lily blooms, the screams of those who have suffered the same unfortunate fate as Yohiki can be heard. And as the petals of the red spider lily fall, new victims emerge.
Nightmare. The screams of Nami, Keiko, and Kumi echo through the hospital as they desperately run away from it. On a hot and humid night at the end of summer in 2018, 18-year-old Nami and her friends decide to go to a liver test to make memories of their summer vacation. Nami did not agree to go, but she could not refuse her friend's invitation. Their destination is an abandoned hospital that was closed in 1990, which is rumored in the area. The abandoned hospital was rumored to be haunted by the spirits of deceased patients. Nami's two friends were Keiko, who was very curious, and Kumi, who had a cheerful disposition. The girls decided to bring a flashlight, a security buzzer, and a good luck charm to prepare for the test of courage. As night fell, Nami and her friends met at the station near the abandoned hospital and headed for their destination. The air was heavy and humid. Along the way, the girls talked about trivial matters to ease each other's tension, but gradually their conversation tended to break off. Nami was walking in terror as the sound of footsteps on the night road overlapped with her own heartbeat. She was determined to participate in the liver test for the sake of her friends while being strong, but deep down inside she regretted it. On her way to her destination, she stared at the darkness around her, and the eeriness of the place made her hair stand on end. Finally, the girls arrived at an abandoned hospital. The place was surrounded by old buildings and seemed to float in a desolate forest. Around the hospital, trees lined the streets, swallowed by darkness, making eerie sounds whenever the wind blew. The hospital, faintly lit by moonlight, was so dilapidated that it was hard to imagine how vibrant it had once been. Nami couldn't stop shaking as she passed through the hospital gates. Her legs would not move forward. Keiko and Kumi, too, began to walk with their smiles fading and their mouths shut. The corridor through which they proceeded, with paint sometimes peeling from the walls due to age and deterioration, and the ceiling swollen white from the humidity, seemed to bear witness to the hospital's past. Inside the abandoned hospital, the air was damp and dimly lit by the moon. Every time Nami and the others' flashlights illuminate the darkness of the abandoned hospital, a shadow is projected on the wall. Each time the shadows moved erratically, the girls' fear increased. Suddenly, an eerie noise echoes down the hallway. Nami and Kumi hold onto Keiko's and Kumi's hands in panic, and the three of them slowly turn their flashlights in the direction of the noise, trying to catch their breath. Kumi musters up the courage to say, "Maybe it was just my imagination," Kumi mumbled in an attempt to reassure them. Nami and Keiko nodded, but their fear only deepened. As Nami and her friends moved deeper into the basement of the abandoned hospital, strange phenomena began to occur. "This place looks like a mortuary," said Nami and Keiko. The three looked at each other and slowly opened the door, and suddenly a cold wind blew through. In the basement of the hospital, where the wind should never blow, it passed between the three of them and the door at the end of the corridor silently closed. They hear what sounds like a child crying in the distance, perhaps the sound of the wind. Nami was frightened, but tried to cheer Keiko and Kumi up by saying, "It's okay, it's probably just the wind or something," she said the words. The girls continued to search the hospital, their hands sweating and tense. Then Kumi suddenly stopped and whispered, "Hey, I need to go to the bathroom," she whispered. Nami and Keiko, puzzled, searched for the nearest restroom. However, after Kumi went into the restroom, she did not come back. Nami and Keiko became worried and called out into the restroom, but there was no answer. Finally, Keiko gathered her courage and stepped into the bathroom. Kumi is nowhere to be found. The bathroom was a mess, as if it had been ransacked, and only Kumi's amulet lay at her feet. Nami was overcome with despair and burst into tears. "I can't do this anymore. Let's go home," Nami mumbled in a shaking voice as she grabbed Keiko's arm and seemed to disappear. Keiko, too, in a trembling voice, said, "No, we can't. We have to find Kumi. I have to find Kumi." Holding hands tightly, the girls searched the hospital again for Kumi, who had disappeared. After a short walk, "I wonder where Kumi went?" I spoke to Keiko, making my voice cheerful. But there was no response. Nami felt something strange in her hand. Nami's right hand, which should have been connected to hers, was firmly holding her severed left hand. Panicking, Nami screamed and threw her hand away. She crouched down on the spot and cried loudly. I thought about going home, but I was sure we would both still be at the hospital. But she decided to go deeper into the hospital alone, believing that both of them must surely still be there. At her feet, the air was damp, filled with abandoned examination rooms and wards that looked as if they had been etched with the history of the hospital. Only the sound of her footsteps echoed through the hospital. Nami clutched the flashlight with her own trembling hands as she made her way through the darkness. Her fear mingled with the sadness of losing her friend and became a piercing pain in her chest. Nami stepped into the operating room, which was deep within. At that moment, the air changed and she was enveloped in a heavy atmosphere that clung to her. He could feel the eyes on him. The operating table was still stained with black stains, and old medical instruments were scattered haphazardly about. She quietly looks around the room, trembling with fear but determined to find her friend. Then, suddenly, she feels a gripping sensation on her leg. Nami hurriedly turns the flashlight to her feet. Nami cannot scream, and she stares at it in horror. There was something with a frightening face she had never seen before gripping her leg. Its face was distorted and it seemed to have no eyes. It gripped Nami's leg tightly and tried to pull her closer. Nami tried to pull her leg out with all her strength to get away from it. But the force was so strong that she could not escape. Nami tears up and mutters an apology to her friend. "I'm sorry." At that moment, Nami's consciousness fades away. She falls into unconsciousness. The next morning, Nami regains consciousness near the entrance to the abandoned hospital. Her mind was confused and her memory was blurred by fear. However, driven by a sense of mission to find her friends, she steps inside the hospital again. The corridor in front of the operating room in the basement, where no sunlight reached, had exactly the same strange atmosphere as last night. When Nami entered the operating room again, she found Keiko and Kumi there. When the girls found Nami, they cried tears of relief and hugged each other. Relieved, the three of them turned around to go home, and there it was, the one who had been in the operating room last night. Slowly but surely, it approached the three of them. The three could not escape it. The next morning, Nami regained consciousness near the entrance of the abandoned hospital. Her mind was confused and her memory was blurred by fear. However, driven by a sense of duty to find her friends, she once again set foot inside the hospital. The corridor in front of the operating room in the basement, where no sunlight reached, had the exact same strange atmosphere as last night. The screams of Nami, Keiko, and Kumi echoed throughout the hospital. This is a mental hospital, where the three were to spend the rest of their lives, never waking up. Every day, forever, at the same time, they scream and become delirious, and the doctors administer sedatives. Their hands and feet are secured with belts as they run amok. These women's lives come to an end in a dark shadow. The horrific experience left them with lasting scars, memories and experiences that will remain with them for as long as they live.
The hide-and-seek alone technique introduced in this video is considered a very dangerous necromancy in Japan. Although it can be easily reproduced with familiar objects, please be careful not to imitate it. It is 1 a.m., and 30-year-old Naoki is at home surfing the internet. His room is dimly lit, and his computer screen is the only source of light. In his small apartment, the air is heavy and tangled with every sigh he lets out. Naoki has no wife or children, and leads an ordinary, solitary life. Born and raised in this town, he graduated from college as he was, but was unable to find a job, so he works at a local convenience store. Everything in his daily life is the same, and he is bored with a repetitive routine. One day, Naoki found a website on the internet about urban legends and ghost stories. One of them, a ghost story called Hide and Seek Alone, intrigued him. This necromancy is a dangerous game known to everyone in Japan. Seeking a thrill and stimulation that he could not experience in his normal life, Naoki decided to try hide and seek alone. He carefully studied the procedure. The moon in the night sky casts a faint light and shadows on the room. The light shines into the room and casts a shadow on an old doll in Naoki's room. The doll had been given to him by his grandmother and had been left in a corner of the room for some time. Naoki's heart pulsed and his heartbeat increased his tension. He did not yet know that this day would change his life into a nightmarish horror. Naoki looked at his watch. Waiting for the scheduled start time of 3 a.m., Naoki went through the steps of hide and seek alone. Step 1. First, prepare the doll and remove all the cotton from inside the doll. Step 2. Place hard rice before cooking in the empty doll. Step 3. Cut your own fingernails, place them in the doll, and sew them together with red thread. At this point, hair or blood can be added to make the seance more powerful, but it increases the risk. It is said that the rice represents the internal organs and the red thread means blood vessels. This makes it possible to connect with the doll. His hands sweating, he clipped his nails and placed the nail fragments into the doll. His hand shook and he cut his fingertips a little. The drop of blood fell onto the rice in the doll. Step 4. Decide on a place to hide in advance and place a glass of salt water there. Hide and seek alone is a game in which you play hide and seek with a stuffed animal. Step 5. Name the dolls. Naoki thinks of a name and chooses the name Mio. This name will be the person he plays hide and seek with. Step 6. Fill the bucket in the bathroom with water. This is the preparation up to this point. Complete the previous steps so that the process can begin at 3 a.m. And the time is 3 a.m. Naoki starts the game. Step 7. He says 3 times to the doll, "The first demon is me," and submerges it in the bucket in the bathroom. The doll's whole body is immersed in the water, and he is anxious and excited to see it. Step 8. Turn off all the lights in the house and turn on only the TV. In this state, meditate and count for 10 seconds. There are no TV programs on at 3 a.m., only an inorganic sandstorm on the screen. Step 9. Take a knife or other cutting instrument and move to the bathroom. At this point, if the doll is still there, unchanged, the game can continue. He says doll's name, stabs the doll with the blade while telling that he has found it, and that the role of the demon will change. He moves to the bathroom. He is relieved to see the doll there unchanged. Then Naoki stabs the doll with a knife, saying, "Mio, I found it." The doll was stabbed in the bucket, and the little bit of air that remained leaked out with a small sound. He then told the doll 3 times, "Mio is the next demon," and hid in a place where he kept salt water. He hid in the closet of his room. The blue-white light of the TV screen dimly illuminated the room. Naoki's heart raced and his breathing became labored. The season is summer in Japan, and even at night it is hot and humid. The enclosed space in the closet becomes unusually hot. Naoki felt sweat dripping down his cheeks. It is said that one can experience a seance by hiding from here for at least 1 hour. The hide and seek alone must be completed within 2 hours by following the correct procedure. Naoki was not sure what was going to happen, and regretted starting the game because of the stifling atmosphere in the room, which did not feel like his own room. At that moment, he heard something fall from the bathroom. He wanted to stop playing hide and seek right now, but it had only been 15 minutes since the game started. To end it now would be a forbidden act that I must never do. Naoki waited patiently for time to pass under his breath, but then he noticed footsteps. Looking out through the closet door, he saw something walking down the hallway. Slowly a black shadow is moving down the hallway. It looks like a person, but it is too dark to see clearly. The black shadow slowly entered his room and stayed in the corner of the room. Naoki felt a gaze that he could not describe. He is being watched. "Where are you?" A voice echoed in the room that was supposed to be empty. Although he should never answer, Naoki reflexively looked at the gap in the door. "Someone is looking at us." He was almost panicked with fear, but he could not be found. He meditated hard and waited for time to pass. How much time had passed? After a long period of silence that felt like infinity, Naoki checked his watch. The time was 4:30. At least an hour had passed since he had to play hide and seek. Naoki took a sip of salt water. The rule of this hide and seek alone is that the spirits cannot see you while you have a mouthful of salt water in your mouth. To end the hide and seek game, the player must spray the salt water in his mouth at the doll in the bathroom and declare that the doll has lost the game. With salt water in my mouth, it opens the closet door. There was a strange man standing upright and staring into the closet. He whispered something in an inaudible voice. "Where are you? Where 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 are you?" Their eyes meet with a strange man. Naoki stiffens, afraid that he is being watched. Naoki loses track of time and stiffens at the sight of the eyes that seem to be sucking him in. Suddenly he remembers that he has to finish within 2 hours. He held back the salt water leaking out of his mouth and headed for the bathroom. When he returned to the bathroom, the doll was not there. Naoki felt cold sweat running down his neck. He began to search the whole house. He suppressed his impatience and moved slowly so as not to make a sound with his footsteps. Naoki does not know where Mio is. All he hears is his own breathing and the beating of his heart. At last, Naoki finds the doll in the living room. She is sitting on the sofa. Naoki gasps at the sight of her. He wanted to end it here. But he made a mistake in the last step. The time was 5:07 a.m. It was past 2 hours. The moment he looked at the clock, a chill ran down his spine. The air became damp and cold, and it became difficult to breathe. Driven by fear, he returns Mio to the bathroom. However, his mind is so confused by fear that he cannot remember the procedure. Naoki thinks frantically, but his impatience gets the better of him. He puts Mio back in the bath bucket and sprays her mouth with salt water. "I win. I win. I win." He declared victory to Mio 3 times. But I felt a twinge of regret for passing the time. An eerie feeling continues to haunt the house. He is tormented by a fear he has never felt before. From that day on, it seemed as if there was always a black shadow in his house. Then, Naoki's fate came to a dark and unexpected end. It was sudden. After performing hide and seek by himself, he could not sleep at night at all. Whenever I close my eyes, I hear that voice in my ear. "Where are you? Where 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 are you?" Naoki, sleep deprived, was on his way home from work at the convenience store when he wandered out into the driveway as if someone was pulling him along. In the midst of the dire situation, the stranger in the room stood quietly by his side. Naoki heard the word surely in his ear at the last moment. "I found. Come play with me?" Have you ever heard of Hanako-san of the toilet, a famous ghost story among Japanese children? In this article, I would like to introduce the spirit of a girl who is rumored to appear in elementary schools in all regions of Japan. This is a story I heard from a relative of mine. It was in the 1980s at an elementary school in a country town. It was 5 p.m. and the setting sun was turning the school red. Amidst the sound of dead leaves, there were 4 children outside the closed school gate. There was Takeshi, a wimpy boy, Kenta, always calm and collected, Akiko, generous, and Yuri, timid. All the children were 10 years old and in elementary school. The children were gathering at a friend's house to study as the time was approaching when they had to go home, And they lied about it. Why were they gathering? It was to meet Hanako-san, who is rumored to appear at this abandoned school these days. The children's gazes were fixed on the old school, which is no longer in use. Although it was still light, the abandoned school looked very eerie. The main gate was made of old iron, and its distorted shape created an indescribable sense of foreboding. The children gasped as they passed through the gate and opened the door to the school building. The children proceeded silently through the school building. The old hallway is made of wood, the floor creaks, and their tension grows. The hallway is rotten in places and has large holes in the wood. As the children stepped inside the abandoned school, a dusty air enveloped them. They walked down the dimly lit hallway and gazed into classrooms that were once crowded with children. The floor was littered with old textbooks, pencils, and blackboard erasers that were years old. The children explored the school building without speaking to one another. Eventually they reached the third floor of the school. The sound of water dripping from somewhere adds to the tension. Is the rumor of Hanako-san the toilet girl in this school true? They stopped in front of the door to the girls' restroom while talking about such things. At that moment, they heard a sudden gust of wind coming from the back of the restroom, where the window was supposed to be closed. The door slowly opened and cold air drifted from inside the restroom. It was as if someone was inviting them to come into the bathroom. The sight sends a chill down their spines. They looked at each other, then gathered their courage and stepped into the restroom. Inside the women's restroom was a dingy, cracked mirror and a hand wash basin. 5 private rooms are lined up against the wall. The third private room from the back is the rumored private room. How to meet Hanako-san. It is said, knock 3 times on the door of the third private room from the back of the girls' restroom on the 3rd floor of the school and call out. The children, looking at each other, go to the third private room from the back. Amidst their growing fear, Takeshi gathers his courage, knocks 3 times on the door, and asks the door, Hanako-san, are you there? He asks the door. They hold their breath and listen carefully. But there is no response. Kenta tries again, but there seems to be no response. Yuri tries again, but there seems to be no response. Yuri tries knocking again. Just as her small hand touches the door, they suddenly hear a noise in the bathroom. They look at each other in surprise. Then Akiko asked in a small voice, Hanako-san, are you there? Yes. Then a fading voice came back and at the same time the door slowly opened. Emerging from inside was a girl with black hair in a bob style, wearing a white blouse and a red skirt. Her skin was pale and she looked lifeless. The children's faces turned pale all at once. They became motionless with fear. Hanako-san approaches the children. Her eyes were cold and staring into the distance as if she could see through their souls. The children cannot run away or raise their voices. Come play with me? Hanako stops in front of the children and whispers in a fading voice. At her words, the children's fear deepens. They were acutely aware that playing in this abandoned school had brought disaster upon them. The children ran away. They run frantically through the dimly lit corridors of the abandoned school. But no matter where they ran, each of them running to a different path, no matter where they hid, Hanako-san's figure would appear before them. Takeshi attempts to leave the school, but for some reason the gate will not open. Eventually, Takeshi feels his strength limit and his breath catches. He stops. Come play with me? At that moment, Hanako appears before him and captures Takeshi. Akiko notices Takeshi's screams and looks out the school building window. There she sees Takeshi being dragged away by Hanako-san. Come play with me? A voice is in his ear and he turns to see Hanako-san there. Akiko's screams echo through the school building. The children continue to cry and run away. Yuri then slips and falls. She struggles to get up, but Hanako-san appears. Come play with me? Yuri is also dragged into the other world. Kenta continues to run away, tears streaming down his face. But no matter how hard he runs, Hanako-san relentlessly pursues him. With his last ounce of strength, Kenta takes a metal bat from the warehouse. Come play with me? Kenta hears a voice in his ear, and as soon as he turns around, he swings the bat as hard as he can. The bat hits Hanako in the head and she lies there bleeding. Come play with me? I must have just knocked her down, but somehow I can still hear it in my ear. I swing the bat selflessly and she falls backwards, bleeding. Come play with me? Stop it. Takeshi shouts, swinging the bat madly. Kenta continued to hit Hanako, who was already lying on the ground, with the bat. Suddenly Kenta came to his senses. At his feet, Takeshi, Akiko, and Yuri were lying in a state of utter disarray. This story was actually posted on the Japanese Internet Bulletin Board 2 channel in January 2004. A woman who calls herself Hasumi posted a detailed account of a strange experience that happened to her. We have reconstructed the story from her point of view and hope you enjoy it. Kisaragi Station. It was January 2004, roughly 20 years ago. A 23-year-old woman named Hasumi was working in an office building at Shinhamamatsu Station in Shizuoka Prefecture, Japan. The time was 22:55. She had just left the office to go home, exhausted from working overtime. The winter night was very cold and seemed to chill her tired body even more. She shrank back and walked quickly to the station she always used. When she arrived at the platform of the Shin-Hamamatsu station, she checked the train time with a familiar hand. The last train would arrive at 23:10. It looks like it will be here soon. She sat down on the bench and looked up at the sky. There were no stars. The lights of the city had blotted out the stars. At that moment, she heard the sound of the train arriving. She got up and boarded the train. The car was mostly empty and there were 5 other passengers, but they all seemed to be asleep. She sat down and leaned her head against the window. The scenery outside drifted by in a blur. One by one the city lights went out and darkness enveloped her. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The train's announcement overhead seemed so far away. The train ran for a while and she noticed something unusual. The train usually arrived at the destination station in about 5 minutes, but it showed no sign of stopping at all. The train had already been running for about 20 minutes. Feeling curious, Hasumi moved to the front of the train and decided to ask the station staff. However, the door to the station clerk's office did not open, and the windows were closed by blinds, so he could not see anything. Meanwhile, the train just kept running. It should not always go through the tunnel, but for some reason the train went into the tunnel. The train stopped at a certain station. Hasumi looked up and saw the name of the station. The station was called Kisaragi Station. It was an unfamiliar station name that she did not recognize. She looked around, but all the passengers on the train were asleep. The train was so quiet that it could have been described as unmanned. She felt a sense of bewilderment in her heart, but also a touch of fear. The time was 24:25. More than an hour had already passed since she boarded the train. She took out her cell phone and searched for Kisaragi Station on the internet, but the station did not even exist on the map. She asked about Kisaragi Station on an internet message board, but no one seemed to know anything about it. The station was surrounded by darkness. There were no houses or buildings, just mountains and grasslands. She groped her way through the area, but could find neither a pay phone nor a cab stand. She looked for the timetable to see if there was a train back, but there was nowhere to be found. Fear enveloped her as she realized how unusual the place she was standing was. She took one deep breath and stared ahead. Ahead of her was the only road that led to the train tracks. Where those tracks would take her, she herself did not know. But she had no other choice. Midnight. The time was 1:10. Hasumi decided to walk along the tracks back to the previous station. 10 minutes after she started walking, her father called her, explained the situation, and suggested she call the police. Hasumi asked the police for help, but they misunderstood it as a prank and did not take him seriously. Suddenly, she heard the sound of drums and bells in the distance. The sound instilled a deep fear in her heart. She kept walking, crying, hoping to reach some station. Before she knew it, she had been walking for an hour. The sound of drums and bells she had heard earlier seemed to be getting closer. Behind her, a voice said, "It's not safe to walk on the tracks." Thinking the station staff was there, she turned around to see an old man with one leg missing standing behind her. But the man disappeared. Seeing the phenomenon, Hasumi trembled and cried in fear. Her legs were already tired, she could no longer walk, and there was a tunnel in front of her. She did not dare to go through the abnormally dark tunnel. At the entrance to the tunnel, there was a sign that read Asanaki. She consulted an online bulletin board where she had posted the events leading up to this point. It turned out to be a tunnel that no one knew about. Standing at the entrance of the tunnel, Hasumi took a deep breath. As darkness enveloped her, a voice echoed in her head. "We have to keep going." The tunnel was covered all over by a cold, black wall. Only the sound of Hasumi's footsteps, lighting her way forward, broke the silence. The tracks led through the center of the tunnel to the other side. Crying, I continued walking, relying on the scant source of light from my cell phone. After walking for about 15 minutes, Hasumi was relieved to see the exit of the tunnel. A man seemed to be standing at the exit of the tunnel. He appeared to be in his 40s, thin and gaunt. He smiled at Hasumi and asked, "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was soft and reassuring to Hasumi. The man offered to take her to the train station and offered to give her a ride in his car. There seemed to be accommodations near that station. Hasumi accepted the proposal and got into the man's car. However, as the car started moving, Hasumi realized that something was wrong. Instead of heading for the station, the car was going deeper and deeper into the mountains. Hasumi asked the man where they were going. The man replied that they were going to Hina Station. Hasumi noticed that this was obviously strange. Although the name of the station was familiar to him, Hina Station was too far from Shinhamamatsu Station. Moreover, Hasumi knew that there were no accommodations at Hina Station. After that, the man stopped answering any questions. The man seemed to be mumbling something in a very low voice. At 3:44 a.m., Hasumi stopped posting on the internet bulletin board, saying, "This is my last post because my cell phone will run out of charge." Where exactly is the Kisaragi station where she got off? This experience became a topic of conversation throughout Japan and is still passed down as an urban legend. In 1990, an 8-year-old girl named Miki lived in Nagano, Japan. She had loved dolls since she was a child and named her favorite doll Mary. Mary was a doll with a cute skirt. She was a precious doll that her mother had bought for her on her 4th birthday. One day, because of her father's work, her family had to move to a place a little further away. Of course, she cherished Mary so much that she was supposed to move with it. Miki was packing her belongings in cardboard boxes for the move. She was deftly packing her things, textbooks, picture books, bags, pillows, and so on. She planned to throw away all the clothes she no longer wore in a plastic bag. At that time, Mary was thrown away among the trash. The day she moved out, she immediately noticed that Mary was gone. Where's Mary? Her mother felt sorry for her, as she was very depressed, and decided to buy her a replacement stuffed animal. A year after the move, she got used to living in a new place and began to adore her new stuffed animal. And she had forgotten about the doll named Mary. Then one night, when she was home alone, she received a phone call. Her parents had not yet returned home, so she answers the phone. "Hello? Hello? Who are you?" But the phone hangs up. The next day she gets another call. It was at a time when she was home alone again. "Hello? Hello? Who are you?" Today a voice came from the other end of the phone.
"I'm Mary. I'm at the dump."
What? The phone went dead. Mary was the name of the doll she had lost. She remembered Mary. "I'm at the dump." She felt uneasy. Soon after, the phone rang again. Here it comes again. The girl answered the phone, thinking it might be her parents calling. "Hello, mother?"
"I'm Mary. I'm at the Imai station."
The phone went dead again. Imai station is the nearest station where she lives. The girl was getting more and more anxious. Then the phone rang again. The girl had a bad feeling, but she picked up the receiver, thinking it might be her mother calling again. "Hello, mother? Come home soon."
"I'm Mary. I'm in front of Tanaka Park."
Tanaka Park is a small park near the girl's house. She realized that the prank caller was approaching. She was terrified. "I'm scared." With that thought, she picked up the receiver to call her mother. At the same time, the phone rang, and she took the call without thinking. She hears a voice.
"I'm Mary. I'm in front of Mickey's house right now."
With that, the phone went dead. Mickey was her name. The girl couldn't stop shaking with fear. She unplugged the phone and looked out the front door. The sun had completely set and there was no one outside. Only the street lamps eerily illuminated the road. She checked that the front door was locked. Then she left the living room where the telephone was located to lock herself in her room. Suddenly, the phone, which should have been unplugged, rang. Already confused, she was filled with fear and anger. Then she answered the phone. "What the hell are you doing? Enough."
"I'm Mary. I'm right behind you."